You guys opted for the community engagement project. When you had to brainstorm a way to take what you've learned in the classroom and connect to the community, what inspired this event?
Queering narratives and looking at poetry through a queer lens, I thought would be a really great idea, and kind of grabbed Shannon and Kaylin. I was like, come on, let's do this.
Yeah, and I mean also, like, this kind of event seemed appropriate.
Yeah.
One of the things that we had discussed in the course is, like, access to different narratives, and how can you provide that access, and how can you provide, like, community, and build that kind of space. And so with the poetry slam, I was like, well, that's perfect.
Presenting on this was something I was nervous about because I didn't want to come off saying the wrong thing or acting like I was speaking on behalf of the community that I'm not necessarily a part of. I mean, I'm an ally, but I didn't want to speak and say something wrong. So the terminology video that we showed in the beginning, I watched a few of those, and I just wanted to make sure I understood different terms and was presenting them in a respectful way that wasn't like excluding. So yeah, that was something that I really worked on. And I think it worked out well.
We're going to start with a little kind of vocab lesson before we start the poetry videos, just to kind of put things into a little bit more of a perspective for you, so we're not inundating you with a lot of terms that you may not know of. So I'm going to pass it to Shannon, who's going to help you out with that.
Thanks. Okay, so like I said, thank you everyone for coming. It's awesome to see this many people here. As Alyssa said, this is a video just kind of explaining terminology, specifically LGBTQ terminology. For anyone who might have questions, don't be afraid to ask.
When we showed the terminology video, it's because this is a tricky topic. This is something that's not so easily discussed. It's easy to make mistakes and step on toes accidentally. It's not saying you're doing it maliciously or trying to judge people. It's just a slip of the tongue, but you're supposed to just be conscious of it. Approach any kind of subject like this, specifically respectfully.
And be willing to make those mistakes. And when you do make a mistake, be willing to try to figure your way out of it and to correct it. And to really just kind of, mature your vocabulary and also mature your understanding and empathy with other people. Labels themselves can be misleading, and appearances, for a lot of cases, can be very misleading. What gives a person a right to say, hey, you look gay? A couple of these poets, they're going to be talking about how specific clothing or hairstyles or, even piercings have given the appearance that they are gay, or how they've been attacked for their appearances. Or some people, like the first poet, she talked about her friend who got a queer haircut. And the queer haircut now allows her to announce the fact that she is gay to the community, and then she's accepted as gay.
What we're trying to touch upon is that labeling can also be restricting. So if you're saying queer, people are automatically going to think, oh, so they're gay, and that's what they're going to write about. Sometimes they're just writing about universal feelings that we all go through. They're just part of a specific community, and that can be misleading.
What I took away from this is that it's so important to hear other people's stories, because we're just so used to saying, you look gay. We're so used to just criticizing and assuming. And from this, I've learned that, he had a different experience. He had a different path. She, they, them. And it's just important to realize where they're coming from. We have to open our minds into their journey. We have to understand it. And I think it's super important to understand. Yeah.
We touch upon one specific thing that maybe you can think about as the videos are playing. You all know what the term gaydar means, and kind of how that's very negative, because that's just the basis of assuming. So these poets really talk about the danger of assumption in terms like gaydar.
The importance of letting people self-identify and the dangers of assuming things about people, because you just don't really know, and by assuming it, I don't know, it's just like a show of like disrespect. And it's funny, like making a connection to the first set of poems we showed, the one about pride, and the speaker said that someone said, wow, like you don't look like you're gay, and she said, and I didn't say thank you, because that's not like it's a compliment or anything by saying I do or don't look the way that I identify. So just the importance of letting people self-identify and not making those assumptions.
For the second video, going through boy things, I just wanted to point out that relationship between sex versus your gender identity. So it's like he's a man, so he's expected to go do all these manly things. There's a difference. You have to fight that. You're not expected to do what other people want, but what you want, and they just don't get that.
I thought one of the most interesting things in like 2 of the videos was the fact of that like hair can be such an identifier. The fact that for the first poet's friend, that like it was her queer bat signal, but for the second poet, it was kind of like a marker of his femininity, and the fact that like, you know, maybe he is interested in boys, and that's kind of like his parents' assumption, or the fact that he's mistaken for a girl, just because he has long hair and maybe like a slightly higher pitched voice. But I think, you know, hair itself, it's quite interesting how like just a certain haircut can dictate the way that people perceive you. If your hair is not long, and you're a woman, you're not feminine, but I mean, so many women have short hair, and it doesn't mean anything about their sexual.
If your hair's long, then you're
Yeah.
not gay enough. Or if his hair is long, then he's gay.
Exactly. So
It differs for not only gender, but sexuality. It's like twofold.
The whole idea of like assuming people's gender and stuff also perpetuates the idea of the gender binary,
Yeah.
yeah.
which lots of people don't really prescribe to.
Yeah.
So that assumption is harmful to them because it invalidates their gender identity.
Absolutely. I mean, we do have some other videos that are going to touch on the fact that gender does not exist only in the binary,
Yeah.
and how it's important to recognize that, because not everybody is going to prescribe to male or female. There's so much more than that.
Seeing the videos with especially the younger generation, the younger children who are so sure of themselves, so aware of themselves and who they are, who they identify as. That definitely, that kind of brought like a little bit of like a tear to my eye. Just the fact that at such a young age that they know. And you can't really, you know, their parents, you know, whomever, society can't really go against that. You know, they can't say that they're too young, that they're you know, too young to self-identify. I think that's what really, you know, touched my heart.
She's like, I want to tell you, every time you call me her, every time you call me she, I want to say wrong. That's wrong. That's not what I identify with.
Yeah, I think that also when she was saying, you're too young, you don't know what you're saying. But she obviously is so, she knows what she is, you know, and I think that a lot of people say that too, oh, you're too young, as if there's an age gap or like a certain age where they would be okay with her defining herself outside of their norms, you know?
Absolutely.
Like, I don't think there's an age, I think it's just, you know.
Yeah, like you could drink at 21 and at 18 you can make decisions about
Right,
who you are, but not until then.
Yeah.
The only thing is, I think that we are all falling into the trap that Chloe is addressing in the poem, which is that she's see, I'm falling into it. She prefers they pronouns. So they're right. Yeah, that's kind of the pronouns that Chloe's going for. Chloe doesn't identify as she, but because of her physical appearance, you know, the hair, the glasses, whatever Chloe's trying to do, everybody keeps asserting the feminine identity onto their body.
I really liked the video of Chloe. I think bringing the child perspective from it was really cool because it brought back the idea that this is something that people have since they're born.
It's important to show someone who's so very young because we think that she can't make those decisions yet. She doesn't know, but it's not even a decision, it's just who she is.
Chloe's gender neutral, so, I mean, it wouldn't be accurate to say boy or girl, male or female, they pronouns.
It goes back to the importance of letting them self-identify. So Chloe mentions in the video that Chloe prefers they and just more neutral terms. So it's just letting people choose that so that we don't just assign them how we perceive them to be.
I love how it kind of takes the child's perspective as well,
Absolutely.
because people really like to ignore the fact that people are the way that they are from birth. It's not something that just happens. It's not something that they choose. They've always been a gender-neutral person. People, the society just pressed those female ideals onto them.
Yes.
And this idea of taking it from the childhood perspective, which a lot of people either ignore or just kind of erase from their story because it doesn't really match.
Yeah.
It's so important that people are supporting Chloe and allowing them to express themselves at such a young age.
I like that it involved the poetry. I think that we do have a lot of interesting diversity discussions on campus, but poetry is different than just a back and forth discussion or a lecture. So it was cool to see the videos, hear them discuss the different things that they went through in such a powerful way and with their emotion as opposed to, again, just like a lecture.
That's why I think this was probably one of our best finds, because it's such a vital poem and such a well-written poem about a specific topic. And something that, like you said, it's very much neglected because someone her age would not normally be given the platform to speak in this way.
I haven't dealt with any of the struggles that they have, so to hear about it opens my mind, makes me want to be more inclusive and help liberate. So I think that it's a great way to bring those discussions on campus. We didn't have them as much last year, and before I came to Iona, I didn't hear much about it, so it's cool that it's so big this year.
I do think it is important to have spaces to express other narratives. And that's why, especially with queer narratives, even with our YouTube searches, there's a lot of queer poetry slams. However, to find people of color in particular was a significant struggle. And so we do try to highlight some people of color in the videos that we chose, but even in that kind of genre, there is some lacking of representation. And so to have these poems, I think, is necessary.
We have to be allies. They have to know they're not alone. They have to know it's okay to come out, to break that plaster, as so many people in the poems have been saying. They have to break their mold. They have to do what they're comfortable with. Even though they're assigned this sex, doesn't necessarily mean they have to identify with that gender.
The importance is to try to, especially because we're all college students, we're all grown up, is to try to push past the fact of just accepting things as they are. Is to try to assert and stand up for other people, be an ally, is to kind of respect people's pronouns. To even, in some cases, which is awkward to do, but I think would be a good practice to ask people what preferred pronouns they want to use.
This is a topic that's really coming up in the media a lot, so I think we really have to understand it. We have to see all perspectives from it.
As a whole, the college community is definitely doing something to be more inclusive in that way. In my own curriculum, I'm even thinking about incorporating, some stories there, some poems there. So it's definitely piqued my interest on an academic level.
I think that today people were really engaging in it, and I think it really was educational as well. Like the clips, I learned so much from hearing people speak about their own personal stories, and I think when people see things like that, it's easier for them to understand and to relate. And to ask questions in a respectful way that we learn together. So I could definitely see this continuing in the future.